Good morning. It's Sunday morning. It's about 9:15. Much nicer day than yesterday. Lots of sunshine, a bit breezy, but so far no sign of rain. And it's time to do the final stretch of this weekend's jaunt, taking the boat to King's Orchard Marina at Lichfield. And so, after a spot of breakfast, I set off at 10:15. Gently, so as not to rouse anyone enjoying a Sunday morning lie-in. I don't know why there are horses in this field, but there are notices up saying, "Don't feed the horses," as I'm sure everyone passing on the towpath is minded to try to give them a carrot or two. I've always liked Ulrawaz. Apart from the previous night when someone in a field played loud music till the early hours, it's always been an extraordinarily quiet village, and I have idle visions of retiring here with a house by the canal. And goodness me, look, there's one for sale. I did look up the listing at the time, and it was extremely expensive despite needing refurbishment. It really was rather blustery. Ulrawaz is bookended with locks, so I had to start my day getting the boat through this one. Locks fill very quickly to start, but the closer they come to full, the lower the pressure of the incoming water, so those last few inches seem to take forever. It's a chance to take stock and admire one's own boat sitting there pretty, ready for adventure. At last I was on my way and past the moorings where I'd probably have ended up the prior night if I hadn't squeezed into that tiny spot above the bottom lock. I have sometimes wondered what the use of a tug deck is, and now we know. It's for a garden bench, of course. In the last video, I filmed 2 large plastic ducks on someone's bow, and bow decorations are definitely a thing amongst some boaters. I've seen Rosie and Jim dolls, octopuses, and now a pink bunny. At least I think it's a bunny. There is nothing more annoying than a rattle you can't locate as you go along. This was filmed in the first week of June, hence the bales of dried grasses. Being a sunny Sunday, there were loads of people walking the towpath with families out for a wander. That's Fradley Marina. It was still being built when I last came past, I think. Here there's a long straight stretch with extremely pleasant, quiet moorings as you head up to Hunt's Lock, just below Fradley Junction. I joke, somewhat meanly, that the many skeletons you see on moorings are people waiting for the CRT to fix leaky lock gates. Is that a bit harsh of me? Let's see how leaky this one is.
Well, I've just discovered that there are no voluntary lock keepers, well, voluntary or otherwise, lock keepers on at Fradley today. This is unheard of. A sunny Sunday in mid-June and no lockies. I shall have to write a stiff letter of complaint to somebody. No, but seriously, there normally are lockies on at Fradley. It's one of the busiest junctions. And to have none on is very odd. Anyway, lots of hard work for me, doing all the locks one after another, with another boat coming up behind me, so I feel the pressure to get on with it. Right, this is the penultimate lock till I turn left at Fradley Junction.
See here how the boat slams forward into the concrete lock sill? This was utter stupidity on my part, due to not tying the centre line properly up above and being distracted by trying to show passers-by what canal boating is all about, and in doing so, getting distracted. So instead, I was showing them how to make a mess of things. I was so embarrassed. There I was thinking I'd be showing off my solo lock handling skills, and instead I made a shambles of it.
Well, that was a textbook demonstration of how not to do a lock, in front of no fewer than about 8 spectators, letting the water in too fast. I started off very gently, and the boat was barely moving, so I got overconfident. Flung open the first paddle, and the boat absolutely slammed forward into the lock gate. I knew that lock was quite violent, and still I opened the paddle. And everyone watched and saw my sheer incompetence. Now there's another one ahead, but there's a boat on the facilities point, so I don't know if they're going to go first or what.
In fact, they were just using the facilities, and I was clear to carry on. And look, it's another sea otter, the same make of boat as mine, albeit a bit longer. But hang on, do my eyes deceive me, or is that a lock keeper up on the bridge? Sure enough, it was, and they quickly had the lower gates open for me to come in, and this lock was transitioned rather more competently than the one I did myself just minutes earlier. At this point you can continue along the Trent and Mersey Canal, but my destination was to the south on the Coventry Canal. So I turned 90 degrees to the left in front of the Mucky Duck pub. The kindly lockkeeper went ahead to open the little pedestrian swing bridge that crosses the canal here. It seems to be access for a house on the far side. I know this stretch well from having moored at King's Orchard Marina for 2 years, and it usually takes an hour and a quarter or so to get there from Fradley. With another narrowboat ahead of me, and as usual so many boats moored at this popular spot, progress was tranquil to say the least. We could put the hammer down a little once past the moorings, to maybe 2.5 miles an hour. I'm often asked, how do you know who goes first when 2 boats approach a bridge from opposite sides? It's very simple. Whoever gets there first, ideally without racing for it, goes through first. But in reality, it can be tricky to work out from a distance which of us will take the lead, so we both end up slowing down and are still none the wiser. Or, even if you believe you're in pole position, there's no guarantee the other boat will follow the rule, so again you slow down rather than have an awkward moment in the middle. Here, the other boat beckoned me through, so I did my best to get on with it. Cautiously up to this blind bridge, but no toot of the horn, we narrowboaters like to live on the precipice of danger. Things had almost come to a halt ahead as a boat was backing onto the metal Armco, with the one ahead of me coming to a stop while it did so. And then even more traffic chaos as a day hire boat appeared round the bend, but we all manoeuvred past each other without a problem. I mentioned in the last video how many boaters like to keep a flower garden on their roof, and here's another example. Plus, many canal-side homeowners also put a fine bit of effort into the shrubbery and greenery. For this road bridge, the canal widens on the approach to the right so that you can get far over and see if anyone's coming the other way. There wasn't in this instance. Apart from the mild peril of impending rain, this was proving to be a very pleasant cruise in the countryside. I recall when I used to chug along here, there was often a boat moored just beyond the bridge, outside a house on the left. But I don't remember this caution sign. And there was no sign of a boat. But it seems that since I was last here, some new private moorings have appeared on the right. I duly went past at a slow enough pace, although with the wind being so gusty, you do have to add a little extra throttle to counteract the push from the breeze. Remember that noisy road, the A38 that I kept banging on about in the last video? Well, it grazes past the canal for a while again here, so it all gets a bit less serene for a while. This will be the captain's log.
I'm coming up to Street Hay, which means I've only got about a mile to go to my destination, and there is just the tiniest hint of rain in the air again. I'm crossing my fingers and everything else to hope that it just holds off for the next 20 minutes or so until I am moored. Then it can start raining once I'm inside having a cup of tea.
It didn't, of course, but I hadn't done badly that morning, all things considered. Street Hay is a busy working wharf with moorings, boatyard facilities, a crane for lift-outs, welding and so on. I had to pause here while a boat executed a masterful turn onto their pontoon despite the wind determined to fight their efforts. And then, with another and faster moving narrowboat right on my tail, I moved with a hop, a skip and a jump along the last few hundred yards to my weekend's destination. And there it is, just past those boats. The entrance is on the left. With that other boat practically up my exhaust pipe, I executed the narrowboat equivalent of a handbrake turn and shot into the marina. This felt like coming home. I originally stopped here for winter in November 2019, and then of course the world came to a halt for a bit, so I ended up here until March 2022. The gap between those boats was my mooring. No one else alongside me like the usual marina pontoons, and just a vista of open water to sit and gaze out on while I had my breakfast. It was bliss. For this temporary visit though, I was to park the boat on one of the visitor berths, so I headed over to see exactly where they wanted me.
Well, here I am, my old haunt, King's Orchard Marina, safely moored. And, you know, canal boating people really are just the loveliest. I've often been asked what do I enjoy about canal boating, and I've always said it's the sense of community, and it really is so, because I was just chatting to the people at the office here and asking them about how I can get to the train station and sort out a bus and so on. Lo and behold, they've offered to just give me a lift back up to Mercia Marina, which is where I left the car. Just so kind, so nice, and I said, oh no, that'll be an imposition, blah blah, and they insisted. So yes, I'll happily take that rather than hanging around waiting for a couple of buses. But just, people are nice. There's some rubbish going on in the world, but most people are nice. That's what I think, and if they do canal boating, doubly so. Anyway, the rain's coming down, time for that cup of tea.